Princess Lyra of the Arivian Empire stood on the balcony of her palace, staring at the alien skies. The twin suns were setting, painting the world in shades of gold and purple. The wind tugged at her long hair, and she felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Her people had been at war for hundreds of years with the human colonies, a fight that had brought nothing but death and sorrow. Crops failed, cities burned, and lives were lost. Her father, the Arivian king, had tried every possible strategy to win the war, but humans were clever and unyielding. Now, the council had come with a radical plan, one that shook Lyra to her core. They wanted her to marry a human. Not for love, not for friendship, but for peace. To unite the two worlds, even if only by a fragile promise of loyalty. Lyra's heart clenched. She had grown up believing humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and cruel. And now she was expected to give herself to one of them. "Your Highness," said Minister Tavrin, bowing low, "this is the only path to save Arivia. The human commander has proven himself in battle, yet he seeks peace. Your union will stop this war before it destroys us all." Lyra turned her gaze from the horizon to the minister. She wanted to believe him. She wanted hope. But her mind was crowded with doubts. Could she trust this human? Could she give her life, her future, and her people to someone she barely knew? The answer came sooner than she expected. A ship appeared above the palace, descending gracefully. It was unlike any human vessel she had ever seen, sleek, dark, with lights that glowed softly in the fading sun. Her heart beat faster. From the ship, a figure emerged. A man, a human. Not many humans had come this close to the Arivian palace. Those who had were usually soldiers, mercenaries, or diplomats. But this man, he moved with calm confidence, carrying himself like someone who knew both the battlefield and mercy. He approached the balcony where she stood. His eyes were steady, a deep shade of brown, and when they met hers, she felt a jolt, a mix of surprise, curiosity, and a strange warmth she had never known. Lyra could see the faint scars on his armor, signs of battles fought, yet his posture was relaxed, almost gentle. "I am Commander Kale," he said, his voice clear and firm, yet without arrogance. "I have come as requested. I do not seek war. I seek understanding." Lyra swallowed hard. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He did not boast, did not threaten, and yet, in his presence, she felt the subtle strength of someone who had survived countless dangers. Something in her chest stirred. She had been told humans were fierce, cunning, and cruel. But here stood a man who did not seem any of those things. The council insisted on a formal meeting. Kale bowed respectfully to her father and to the ministers. Lyra noticed how he listened more than he spoke, how he studied the room, the faces, the tension between words and silence. Even in a room full of skeptical Arivians, he seemed to command attention without raising his voice. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She walked the palace corridors, thinking about the proposal. She was to marry a human for peace, to give herself to someone unknown. Fear and duty battled in her heart, but slowly, a small ember of hope grew. Maybe this marriage could be more than politics. Maybe it could save lives. Maybe, just maybe, it could change everything. As dawn approached, Lyra made her decision. She would meet Kale not as a prisoner of politics, not as a girl afraid of the unknown, but as someone willing to see the truth for herself. She would give peace a chance, and if that peace required her heart, her courage, and her faith, then she would give it all. Standing on the balcony, she whispered to herself, "For my people. For Arivia. I will try." Below her, Kale waited patiently, his eyes softening as he watched her silhouette against the rising suns. He did not rush her decision, but she felt as if he understood the weight of it all. In that moment, Lyra sensed that this human might be more than a commander. More than a soldier, he might be the spark that could ignite a new future. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a flicker of something dangerous and exciting, hope. The next morning, Commander Kale walked through the grand gates of the Arivian palace. Courtiers and guards whispered among themselves, eyes full of curiosity and suspicion. He moved calmly, his steps steady, as if the palace itself did not intimidate him. His armor glinted faintly in the soft sunlight, scarred but well kept, telling a story of battles fought and survived. Yet, despite the weaponry, there was no hint of aggression in his presence, only a quiet confidence that seemed to ripple outward. "Princess." Lyra watched him from the balcony, her heart caught between worry and fascination. She had imagined this meeting countless times in her mind, the humans stumbling, the palace guards glaring, the council disapproving. But Kale, he seemed different. He carried himself with the ease of someone who had faced danger far greater than palace, politics, and had come through unshaken. The first council meeting after his arrival was tense. The grand hall, with its towering crystal columns and golden banners, buzzed with unease. Ministers spoke quickly, each trying to impress Kale with military intelligence, battle strategies, and plans to subjugate human colonies. Yet he listened. He did not interrupt. He did not scoff or dismiss. He simply observed, absorbing every word, every hesitation, every glance. Lyra sat quietly beside him, her fingers brushing the edge of her seat as she studied him. She noticed how he leaned slightly forward when someone spoke, how his eyes flickered with understanding and patience. When a minister suggested a preemptive strike, Kale did not argue. He simply asked, "Have we considered what peace could gain us, rather than what war could take?" The room fell silent. The council, used to power measured in fleets and weapons, had never considered words as tools of strength. Lyra felt a spark of hope. Could this human really see what her own people could not? Could he offer more than just a temporary truce? Over the next days, Kale moved through the palace with quiet purpose. He visited training grounds, not to boast, but to watch Arivian soldiers, offering gentle advice on strategy and teamwork. He met engineers in the labs, asking questions about technology and supply chains, showing respect for their knowledge. Even the palace staff, who had long grown weary of diplomats and generals, began to speak his name with admiration. One evening, Lyra found herself walking beside him in the palace gardens. The air was warm, fragrant with alien blossoms that glowed faintly in the twilight. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. Kale broke the silence first, not looking at her but at the stars. "I have been to many worlds," he said softly. "I have fought, I have survived, and I have learned something important. Power is not in destroying your enemies. Power is in knowing when to hold back, when to speak, and when to act." Lyra's heart skipped. She had never heard anyone speak like this. Not kings, not ministers, not even her father. She felt a strange calm wash over her, as if his words were meant for her alone. "You speak as if peace is stronger than war," she said quietly. Kale finally looked at her, his eyes steady. "Peace is not weakness," he replied. "It is courage. It is the hardest strength to achieve, because it demands patience, restraint, and trust. True power lies in not needing to prove yourself through fear." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to ask him more, to understand how a human could possess such control, such calm, yet still command respect. She realized with a mix of wonder and apprehension that Kale's presence alone was changing the palace, changing her people, and perhaps changing her. That night, as the twin moons rose over the Arivian horizon, Lyra stood by her balcony again. She looked down at Kale, talking quietly with the guards, listening to their concerns, laughing softly at something small and human. A new feeling stirred in her heart, one she had not expected. Respect, admiration, perhaps even hope. For the first time, she began to imagine a future where humans and Arivians could coexist. Not through fear, not through submission, but through understanding. And in that moment, she understood that marrying Kale for peace might be the first step towards something far greater, something neither she nor her people had ever dared to dream. The princess whispered to herself, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Perhaps this human is more than just a commander. Perhaps he is the future." The outer colonies of Arivia had always been volatile, but this time, the unrest was different. Reports arrived in the palace that a group of rebels had seized control of a strategic settlement, threatening the fragile peace that Kale and Lyra had begun to nurture. The council immediately demanded a full military response. Ships, weapons, and troops were ready to march at dawn. Princess Lyra, however, hesitated. She knew Kale's approach was different, unpredictable. She had seen his patience, his way of listening before acting. Still, part of her feared for him. Sending a single human commander into a camp of armed rebels seemed reckless. She could not shake the image of him standing alone, unshielded by armies. In the heart of danger. "Kale," she whispered that night, as he walked through the moonlit gardens. "I know you do not need my permission, but please, be careful. They are armed. They are desperate." Kale looked at her, a small smile softening his sharp features. "Lyra, courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. Sometimes, the hardest path is the one that saves the most lives." Before dawn, Kale departed for the rebel camp. Lyra's heart pounded as she watched his ship lift off, alone. She paced the palace halls, unable to sit, imagining every possible danger he might face. She wanted to believe he would succeed, but part of her braced for the worst. Hours passed. Then, word arrived. Kale had reached the camp. Lyra rushed to the council chamber, joining the ministers who waited anxiously. Through the palace's communication array, they watched him step from the ship. There he stood, tall and calm, facing hundreds of armed rebels. Lyra's breath caught. Kale did not draw a weapon. He did not shout or demand submission. Instead, he began to speak. His voice carried across the camp, firm yet gentle, calm yet commanding. He addressed each leader by name, acknowledging their grievances, their struggles, and their fear. He offered solutions, not threats. The rebels hesitated, confused. Weapons wavered in their hands. Kale's presence seemed to fill the air, not with menace, but with authority that could not be ignored. Slowly, the leaders lowered their weapons. One by one, they stepped forward and knelt, pledging to stand down and listen. Lyra watched, wide-eyed. She had never seen power like this, not in armies, not in generals, not even in her father. Kale had done the impossible. Without a single shot fired, without blood spilled, he had ended the threat and secured the settlement. When Kale returned to the palace later that day, he was greeted not with cheers, but with silent awe. Lyra ran to him, relief washing over her in waves. You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You faced them alone, and you stopped them without hurting anyone." Kale took her hand, his touch steady, reassuring. "Lyra, strength is not always measured in what you destroy. Sometimes it is measured in what you save." Her chest tightened. She realized something profound. This human, whom she had married for peace, possessed a power that far exceeded the strength of armies. It was subtle, quiet, and undeniable. It was the power to change minds, hearts, and the course of events without violence. But alongside awe, a flicker of worry crept in. If her father, the Arivian king, witnessed this, how would he react? He had always believed power meant control through fear and force. Could he understand the kind of strength Kale wielded? Could he see that sometimes words and courage could triumph where weapons failed? Lyra clenched her hands, torn between admiration, hope, and anxiety. One thing was certain: her life, her people, and the empire itself were changing. And she was beginning to understand that the human she married for peace might not just be a commander. He might be a force far greater than anyone had imagined. That night, as Kale rested, Lyra stayed awake, gazing at the stars. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "If this is the human way, then maybe this is the future Arivian needs." The Arivian king sat in his grand chamber, the golden light of the twin suns casting long shadows across the floor. His fingers drummed against the polished surface of the council table, each beat echoing his unease. News of Kale's peaceful resolution of the rebel camp had spread quickly through the palace. The settlement was safe, the rebels surrendered, but the king did not feel relief. Instead, he felt something unfamiliar, suspicion. He had always ruled through strength. Fear and authority were the language of power, and no one had ever challenged him so quietly and completely. Now a human commander had done the impossible. He had faced armed rebels alone and won not with weapons, but with calm words, measured presence, and something deeper that the king could not define. "Bring him to me," the king commanded. His voice was low, firm, and unyielding. Guards hurried, and Kale appeared soon after, bowing with perfect respect. His calm eyes met the king's, unwavering, yet polite. "Commander Kale," the king began, his tone sharp as a blade, "your actions at the rebel camp, they are impressive, yes. But I will not be deceived. Humans often exaggerate their abilities. Tell me honestly, are you hiding something? Are you lying about your power?" Kale remained silent for a moment, steady and composed. Then he spoke, each word measured. "I have power, your majesty. But it is not in weapons or in armies. It is in restraint, understanding, and the choices we make. I do not need to fight to be strong. I fight only when all else fails." The king's eyes narrowed. "Words are not enough. My empire is vast, my people demand results, not speeches. You claim strength without force, and yet you stop wars with a few words? Do you take me for a fool?" Kale shook his head slightly. "I do not wish to deceive you, King Ariv. Power is often misunderstood. Strength comes in many forms. I understand your doubt, it is natural. I did not ask for blind trust. I ask for observation. Judge me by what I accomplish, not what you expect." The king's jaw tightened. He had ruled for decades, and in all those years, he had never encountered a human whose confidence was unshakable. who spoke softly but commanded attention, who acted without pride, yet made impossible things happen. It unsettled him. Lyra, standing nearby, watched her father's expression closely. She had feared this confrontation. She knew her father would not easily accept Kale's methods. But she also knew something else. Kale's power was real, and it was not a threat. It was hope. The king rose, pacing the chamber. Your words are clever. Your peace is effective. But I will not allow my empire to be led by uncertainty. Tell me, Kale, if an enemy stronger than the rebels arrives, if your words fail, will you still protect Arivia? Kale's gaze did not waver. Yes, your majesty. I will protect Arivia. Not because I desire glory, but because your people deserve life, peace, and a future. I will do whatever is necessary to ensure that. The king paused, studying him. There was no arrogance in Kale's eyes. No fear. Only certainty, calm, and a deep, unspoken strength. For the first time in decades, the king felt a flicker of admiration mingled with unease. This human was unlike any other being he had ever met. Lyra stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Father, Kale's power is different, yes, but it is real. He saved the rebel camp without bloodshed. He has shown us that strength can exist without fear. Please, see him as I do. The king's expression softened slightly, though his authority remained. He had seen the settlement, the submission of the rebels, and Kale's calm command. He could not deny it. This human had done what years of war could not. For the first time, he spoke with respect, if still guarded. Commander Kale, you are no ordinary human. I do not fully understand your ways, but I will watch, and I will judge by results. Do not fail us. Kale bowed deeply. I will not, your majesty. Lyra felt her chest tighten with relief and awe. The confrontation had passed, yet the tension lingered. Her father still ruled with caution, still demanded proof. But she knew something fundamental had shifted. The king had seen a glimpse of Kale's power, and it was enough to plant the seed of respect, and perhaps, the start of acceptance. That night, Lyra stood alone on the balcony, staring at the stars. She whispered softly, "He is unlike anyone I've ever known. And somehow, I trust him more than anyone else in this palace." And deep inside, she felt the quiet stirrings of hope that Kale's presence could change not just her life, but the future of her empire. The morning sky over Arivia burned with a strange orange glow, signaling danger far beyond the palace walls. Scouts rushed into the council chamber, breathless and anxious. A massive fleet of human ships, unlike any seen before, hovered at the borders of the empire. Their size and weaponry dwarfed Arivia's defenses. Panic swept through the room as ministers shouted over one another, calling for immediate attack. Princess Lyra stood frozen, her heart pounding. She had feared this day might come. All the training, all the alliances, all the negotiations, everything depended on Kale now. And yet, she felt a strange calm settle over her as she looked toward him. His eyes, steady and unwavering, met hers. There was no fear, only determination. "Prepare the fleet," Minister Tavern demanded, his voice trembling. "We cannot let them breach our borders." Kale raised a hand. "No," he said softly, yet firmly. The room went silent. "Weapons will not solve this." "Not yet. Send a message instead." "I will speak with them directly." Gasps filled the chamber. To walk toward a fleet armed with superior technology alone was unthinkable. Lyra's chest tightened. "Kale, it's too dangerous," she whispered. He turned to her, calm and reassuring. "Danger is everywhere, Lyra. Strength is in knowing when not to fight." Without waiting, Kale boarded a small, unarmed vessel. He approached the massive fleet with nothing but his words and his presence. Lyra watched, her stomach twisting, as the enormous ships loomed closer, weapons gleaming under the alien sun. Then Kale spoke. Not through force, not through threat, but through a calm, commanding voice that somehow carried across the void. He addressed the fleet's commanders by name, acknowledging their skill, their grievances, and their desire to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. He spoke of mutual respect, cooperation, and the greater cost of war. Lyra could barely breathe as she saw the impossible happen. The massive fleet wavered. One by one, the commanders signaled retreat. Weapons powered down. Shields lowered. The human invaders were withdrawing not out of fear, but out of respect for Kale. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. The human she had married for peace had achieved what no army, no weapon, and no council could. He had saved her people without a single shot fired. His power was quiet, subtle, and absolute. When Kale returned to the palace later that evening, the hall was filled not with celebration, but with awe. Ministers and soldiers alike whispered his name, unable to comprehend what they had witnessed. Lyra rushed to him, throwing her arms around his neck. You did it," she said, her voice breaking. "You stopped them. Without fighting." Kale held her tightly, a small smile on his lips. "I did not stop them alone," he said softly. "I only showed them the choice they had. True strength is in showing others a better way." The Arivian king entered the hall then, his expression unreadable. He had watched Kale's actions unfold from the palace observatory. The weight of what he had seen pressed down on him. He could not deny the truth. Kale had demonstrated power unlike anything the Arivians had known. Not the brute force the king valued, but a quiet authority that commanded respect and loyalty without a sword. "Commander Kale," the king said finally, his voice low but steady, "you have shown me a power I cannot fully understand. Yet I cannot deny its effectiveness. You have done what I believed impossible." Lyra's heart swelled. Her father's words, though cautious, were the closest thing to approval he had ever given. The empire had been shaken, but Kale had saved it. Not with fear, not with force, but with the strength of his mind, his courage, and his presence. That night, Lyra stood on her balcony, looking at the stars, feeling the weight of what had just happened. She whispered softly to herself, "I married him for peace, and he gave us a future I never imagined." Below, Kale rested, his hand brushing against hers, even from a distance. In that moment, she realized the truth. The human she had married was not just a commander. He was a force of change, a quiet storm, and perhaps the most powerful ally Arivia had ever known. And in her heart, Lyra understood that the world had shifted, not through fear, but through the extraordinary courage of one human. The palace was quiet after the fleet's retreat, but the tension in the air had shifted. What had once been fear and suspicion was now a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The Arivian king called a private council with Kale, demanding answers he was not sure he wanted. Lyra followed quietly, her heart heavy with both pride and anxiety. "Kale," the king said, his voice measured but sharp, "you have shown us your power. But I do not understand it. Speak plainly. How do you command such respect, such obedience, without weapons? Are you hiding something, some trick, some secret strength we cannot see?" Kale met the king's gaze steadily, unflinching. "No tricks, your majesty," he said. "No hidden weapons. My strength is human, yes, but it comes from understanding, choice, and presence. I do not need to destroy to protect. I do not need to threaten to lead. True power is in knowing when to act, and when to let wisdom guide your hand." The king's brow furrowed. Words alone cannot hold fleets at bay. "Surely you must have done something else, some unseen force?" Kale shook his head. "I only spoke, observed, and chose. I treated them as beings capable of understanding consequences, not simply enemies to fear. They responded because they recognized the truth, that continued conflict would cost all of us more than it was worth." Lyra stepped forward, her voice soft, but filled with conviction. "Father, Kale saved the fleet without spilling blood. He did not command through fear, he inspired through choice. That is his power." The king's eyes narrowed as he considered her words. He had ruled Arivia with strength and fear for decades, believing that force alone maintained order. Yet he could not ignore what Kale had done. The human had not only stopped a superior enemy fleet, but had done so with calm, dignity, and without a single casualty. Kale continued, his tone gentle but firm. "I did not seek glory, your majesty. I sought to prevent unnecessary suffering. Humans survive not because we dominate, but because we adapt, learn, and trust. Strength is not always measured in what you break, but in what you protect." For the first time, the king felt a pang of understanding. He had always equated power with control, with fear, with overwhelming force. And yet here stood Kale, proving that there was another kind of strength, one that could change the course of wars and empires without lifting a sword. Lyra's chest swelled with admiration and a quiet joy. She realized that she had married this human not merely to secure peace, but to witness a different kind of heroism. Kale's power was subtle, yet unstoppable. It demanded courage, patience, and unwavering belief in the good of others, a combination she had never seen in anyone else, not even her father. The king finally spoke, his voice low, measured. "Kale, you have shown me something I never believed possible. You have not only saved our people, but you have forced me to reconsider the way we measure strength. Perhaps there's more to power than I understood. Kale bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I do not seek to undermine you. I only wish to protect Arivia and its people. If my ways seem unusual, it is only because they rely on understanding rather than intimidation." Lyra reached for Kale's hand, feeling a warmth that went beyond relief. In that moment, she understood how extraordinary he truly was, not just a human. Not just a commander, but someone whose presence could shift the hearts and minds of even the most rigid rulers. The king watched them both, a flicker of respect and admiration hidden beneath his stern exterior. He could not deny the truth. Kale's human strength had surpassed anything the Arivian Empire had known. That night, Lyra stood alone on the balcony, looking at the stars. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I married him for peace. But he has given me so much more. He has shown me the power of courage, trust, and hope." And in her heart, she knew that the Empire's future was no longer uncertain. With Kale by her side, Arivia could finally learn what true strength meant, and she was proud to be part of it. Months had passed since Kale had demonstrated his extraordinary power. The Arivian Empire was changing, slowly but surely. Soldiers once trained only for war now trained to understand negotiation. Diplomats, inspired by Kale's calm presence, learned to listen before acting. Even the council, once rigid and suspicious, had begun to respect his ideas. Arivia was not just surviving, it was growing, learning a new kind of strength. Princess Lyra watched these changes with awe and quiet pride. She had married Kale for peace, to save her people, but she realized that he had given them more than a fragile truce. He had given them hope. And in giving hope to others, he had changed her heart as well. One morning, the king summoned them both to the central chamber. The room was filled with advisors, generals, and nobles. Kale and Lyra entered side by side, calm and dignified. The king, once stern and cautious, now smiled faintly, a warmth in his eyes that few had ever seen. "Commander Kale," he began, "your actions have reshaped the course of our empire. You have taught us that strength is not only in weapons, but in wisdom, patience, and courage. My daughter chose wisely, and so have we all." Lyra felt a surge of emotion. She squeezed Kale's hand gently. His calm gaze met hers, and in that look she understood everything: the battles, the fears, the victories, and the sacrifices. Together, they had transformed more than just borders. They had transformed hearts. Kale stepped forward, his voice steady, carrying a quiet power that resonated through the chamber. "Your Majesty, my goal was never to dominate or impress. It was to protect, to guide, and to give Arivia a choice. True strength is in making the right choice, even when it is the hardest." The council nodded, many of them visibly moved. Soldiers who had once relied on fear to command obedience now felt inspired to lead with integrity. Nobles whispered among themselves, realizing that the future Kale offered was far brighter than the one they had expected. After the council, Lyra and Kale walked through the palace gardens. The twin moons rose above them, bathing the alien flora in silver light. Lyra turned to Kale, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I married you for peace," she said, "but you've given me everything. Respect, hope, and a future I never imagined." Kale smiled, his hand brushing against hers. "And you've given me something equally precious, Lyra: trust, courage, a chance to show that humans are not defined by war, but by the choices we make. Together, we have changed Arivia, and perhaps someday, the stars beyond it." Lyra's heart swelled. She realized that their union was more than political, it was the start of a new era. A union built not on fear or power or obligation, but on understanding, respect, and the shared desire to protect life and peace. The king, watching them from afar, felt a rare pride. He had feared the unknown, doubted Kale, and questioned his methods. Yet he could not deny the truth. This human had surpassed every expectation, every standard, and had become a force for good that could not be measured in armies or weapons alone. That night, as the palace slept, Lyra and Kale stood on the balcony together, looking out over the glowing cities of Arivia. The air was calm, the stars shining like silent witnesses to the change that had taken place. Lyra leaned her head on Kale's shoulder, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" she asked softly. Kale chuckled. "Every day. But I also think about how it will continue, and how together we can face whatever comes next." Lyra smiled, hope and love mingling in her heart. She realized that marrying him for peace had been the first step, but the journey they shared now leading an empire, inspiring change. and facing the future together was far greater than anything she had ever dreamed of, and somewhere deep inside, she knew this truth. The human she had married was not only a protector and a lead,